I'm Wayne County Treasurer Eric Sabri. We are living through unprecedented times. As a result, the Michigan Homeowner Assistance Fund was created. This fund, administered by the state of Michigan, is designed to help homeowners cope with pandemic-related hardships, such as delinquent property taxes. Residents may apply for up to $25,000 to help cover 2019, 2020, and 2021 tax years. Previous year's taxes must be paid in full or in a payment agreement with the Treasurer's office. Eligible homeowners must have a qualified financial hardship that occurred on or after January 21st, 2020. You must currently own and occupy your home as your primary residence.
All right. I don't know what's going on in the background here. Somebody have something on their computer? All right. Okay. Well,
silence here.
Yeah, we're hearing an echo here. It's I don't know what's going on here. Let me. All right. Anyways, welcome.
No idea. Not here.
I can't hear you guys.
And now you're muted.
Can you hear me, Nance?
I can hear you, Steve.
All right. Can you guys hear?
Now we can.
We're still echoing now.
All right. Yeah, I don't know what the hell's going on here. All right.
Okay. Can we at least start the show?
Yes. All right.
While you
Welcome to
troubleshoot
the
it.
week that was. We've got Nancy Derringer back. Nancy Derringer's back. We've got attorney Joel Sklar. We've got attorney Steve Fishman. And we've got pollster Ed Sarpolus. Welcome, everybody. Saeed couldn't make it today, but we've got Nancy, our special treat today. So anyways, let's start out with, we've got a little tape from Mitch McConnell.
What are my thoughts about what?
Running for re-election in 2026.
That's
Did you hear the question, Senator? Running for re-election in 2026? All right, I'm sorry, you all. We're going to need a minute. Senator.
I've seen that before. I think it's a mini stroke there. I think, and they keep saying that nothing's going on, everything's going well. When you have a mini stroke, you can go back to work a little bit later, But so, anyways,
The other thing is
We got to figure out this echo.
all right, shit.
Mute people one by one.
All right, let's see here. All right, let's see where it's coming from. Not Nancy. Okay, let's see. Joel. All right. Not Joel. Okay, people can pitch in. Let's see. We've got, all right. Not there. And let's see.
Is it mine?
Fishman.
There we go.
Fishman.
It's Fishman.
It's Fishman.
Fishman.
It's always Fishman.
Fishman. Fishman. All right, Fishman. It's you.
What do you mean it's me? What do you want me to do?
The echo. I don't know. Why don't you try to come back in? So we'll work it from there.
We didn't have this problem when Nancy was lifeguarding. We had no echo problems. So you can blame it on me if you want, but I know where this is coming from. What do you want me to do? You want me to go back in?
Yeah.
Wait, actually, now it's gone. So.
Yeah.
Now it's fine?
Yeah.
Seems to be.
Well,
Or you can keep Fishman muted until he raises a finger and then unmute him.
Is it fine now?
It's better.
Yeah, it's still echoing a little bit.
Well, if you want me to move around in the house, I'm in the house. So.
All right, maybe that'll help. He's in the house.
We should just call this the Boomer Show. It's
right. What's going on? I don't know. This internet.
I can't get the VCR clock.
We're now getting the ghost hunters going to a house.
The internet. I don't know.
It's all Nancy's fault. There's no doubt. All right. How about now?
All right. Okay. Let's see.
Let's give it a try.
All right. So I guess the question is, what do we make of this Mitch McConnell thing? I mean, you see all these people hanging on, Dianne Feinstein, and then some people on the other side will say Joe Biden. What's the deal?
They're all right. We're too old with our big Indian chiefs. We're too old, and it's irresponsible for these people to hold office, to keep office. Even Biden, Trump. I mean, we need a younger generation of leadership. We have to embrace the younger generation of leadership. Holding on till death doesn't make a whole bunch of sense to me. And 81, or the president's going to be 84 by the time he finishes his term if Biden wins, or 85. That's nuts. I mean, and as far as McConnell goes, I don't like Mitch McConnell, but my heart breaks for the guy.
Well, his problem is the fact that he had a concussion, and concussion for the first year, you can have some of these pass outs plus lack of hyperventilation and the lack of drinking enough water during the day. And so this will be ongoing. And it might not even be a mini stroke. It might just happen because of his concussion. He's still got healing going on.
Well, he's having cognitive issues and he can't stop that.
Right.
That's a big problem, you know. And the doctor who cleared him, I have an issue about that. I don't know what he did, but Mitch doesn't look like he should be doing this anymore.
Here's what I don't get. I mean, people age differently. Okay. I think there's a meme going around that points out that Mitch McConnell and Mick Jagger are the same age, which I think is kind of hilarious. But, you know, people age differently. I mean, some people are used up at 60. Some people are still going strong at 90. So it's not like you can put an age thing on here. But I guess my question is, particularly with somebody like Biden, he comes from a large family. He's very warm. He loves his family. He loves his grandchildren. At what point do you not say it's just time? It's time for me to step off stage. I mean, nobody is irreplaceable. Absolutely nobody. So let's replace a few people.
Well, when working with John Conyers when he was old, he was just lonely without working. He could not handle not working in politics. He got depressed.
That's a mental illness, I think.
It is.
It really is.
All right, Fishman.
The first thing is when you're comparing Mitch McConnell and Mick Jagger, the obvious problem with McConnell, he didn't do near enough drugs when he was a young man. That's what his problem is. If he would have gotten high on every possible drug known to mankind, he'd be still touring.
And sleep with billions of women too. So yeah.
And men as well, including David Bowie, by the way. But you know, but who cares?
Nobody judge.
I think what Ed. I think Bob always puts up their ageism is no good. But I think what Ed just said about John Conyers, I think there's a lot of truth to that. And I don't think it just applies to people who are in politics. I think there are a lot of us who, as we get older, particularly lawyers, doctors, whatever, you felt like you've been kind of an important person, or you kind of had something to say out in the world. And all of a sudden you're getting older and people don't really want to hear what you have to say. And it's just difficult. It's very difficult for a lot of people to put it down. I mean, I still kind of work. I don't do what I used to do, but of course I'm only 74. I'm not 81, and I haven't had any TIAs as far as I know. Nobody's told me I have. But I do believe that what Ed said is true, that I think there are a lot of people who just have a hard time finding something else to do. And David Brooks had a fantastic comment in the New York Times last week on exactly that subject. It was a long column. I sent it to a couple of my friends about people who have quit doing what they were doing, high-powered people who then went to, I think it was at Stanford, they started a whole new, almost like an old people's gathering to find other things. Some of them wanted to garden. Some people wanted to play the saxophone. I mean, just to find something else to do. Ed, if I can ask, have you done any polling? What do the younger people think of this whole business with so many old folks in charge?
Well, it basically, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, the old person in charge, the youth, it's time to go, okay? But your problem with the fact is when you give them the options on the November election, it's still the fact that they're going to vote for somebody that they trust, okay? Now, Biden, I will guarantee you this, Governor Newsom and Governor Whitmer are waiting for when they pull the President Biden off the list because they're ready to run. Newsom's been getting ready to run to fill in for now. He's going to debate DeSantis. Why? Because he's expecting Biden may, like Lyndon Baines Johnson, for those who have been around, moved out of the position to walk and run for president close to the convention time. But the youth people still the end. If you're a Democrat and youth person, you're going to lean more to Biden over Trump if that's who the two that are there, because then what are you going to go with? You're going to go with the independent guy, the Green Party guy, who's got $500,000 in lawsuits on taxes and child support. What else are you going to do?
Yeah, it's so the question is, should there be an age limit on all these jobs?
No, but people
You wouldn't
should
be
have,
online right now, Len, if there was.
people should have enough self-awareness to know when it's time for them to step aside.
Yes.
I mean, like I said, there are 80. Do I want Mick Jagger to stop touring because he's 81? No, because we saw him 2 years ago. He put on a fantastic show. So no, I don't think so. But I wish people would be more honest with themselves about what they're capable of.
All right, Steve Fishman.
I think there's more than just people being honest with themselves. I've read any number of articles, all of which made a lot of sense. It's the people that are around the people who should be more honest with themselves that could really help out. And I'll give you a real brief story. Judge Patrick Duggan, who's now deceased, we attended a retirement party, and we had 2 or 3 of our judges in federal court that stayed too long at the fair, and they were eventually had to have kind of a come to Jesus moment where they left. And Judge Duggan and I were at one. We were having a beer, and I asked him something about retiring. He said, "Steve, don't worry about it. My family will let me know when it's time for me to step down." And he did step down before he became in a situation where he would have not been able to do the job. And I really think the people around you, I'm looking at that young lady and then the guy who came up when McConnell froze like that. And what you need is people like them to be saying, Senator, it might be time to let's just go and sit down in Kentucky, give him all of his plaudits, have a few dinners for him or all that stuff that these people like. I think the people that are around people who are getting too old for their job really bear a responsibility as well.
Nancy.
But you know what? I don't know that would necessarily be effective, because I remember reading, I think Debbie Stabenow wrote a pretty good column when Dianne Feinstein was newly back to the Senate after her, shingles episode earlier in the year. And she named some things that she had personally seen in the United States Senate around this issue. She said that Strom Thurmond, who was bound and goddamn determined to stay in until they carried him out, on his back, actually was carried in on his back toward the end of his career, that they had him on a stretcher in the cloakroom with a male nurse. And when it was time for him to vote, they would just raise him to a standing position. He would get in there and he would cast his vote, and he'd go back to the de facto hospital room in his office.
I mean,
it's and Conyers was the same way. I mean,
Yes.
they said Conyers spent most of the last part of his career, taking jazz music lessons. I don't know. He was some kind of player. I forget. And sometimes if anybody who's ever done an intervention with somebody who's got a drinking problem or a drug addiction knows that the person that's the focus of it can always just say, nope, I'm not going to do it. And they've got the power. So,
well, some of this is existential. I know, like Bear Bryant didn't want to retire because he thought if he retired, he'd die.
Right.
Retired 3 months later, he dies. For a lot of, it's just, Joe Paterno had the
Joe
same.
Paterno did the same thing. Yeah.
Same thing. And so I think for a lot of these people, it's existential. This is my purpose. I've been doing this for 40 years, 50 years, God only knows. If I give it up, I'm going to die. This is it. This is my purpose. This is what keeps me going. And there is some correlation to that. When people do retire, there's a belief that work is the antidote to death for some people in retirement. There are some people that work until their 90s. There's some lawyers that work until their 90s. I think, in the Ford building even.
In my family, we're taught to have another job while we're living a job. Like my uncle who taught 50 years, 7th grade, he's still saying it 7th grade. He knew he was going to be retiring because of health, but he started painting barns. He started doing other things. So he was transitioning during that time. My mom did. Everybody in my family who lived to be in their 80s and 90s always had something else to do after they retired to keep them going.
That is smart. Since Deadline Detroit went, I guess, semi-comatose. Yeah. I've been kind of looking for something to do. And, the reason I was gone all summer, Fishman was laughing at me, is because I worked as a lifeguard this summer. I got my training. I kept reading these stories about the lifeguard shortage and how pools are hiring old retirees and, making those fat stacks of $15 an hour. And that's what I did this summer. I was at Chandler Park, the weirdest lifeguard in the whole water park. So, but it, it resets your brain a little bit to do something like that, because you start thinking like, what is next? I mean, how can I build on this tiny thing and make it something more meaningful? And I think, for me, I think I'm going to spend some time teaching kids how to swim, because that's really important.
Fishman.
I think the kids at Chandler Park are probably way better swimmers than they were, looking up at the lifeguard thing and saying, "Holy shit! If I get in trouble, what do I do now?"
What's that old lady
I'll bet you we had a bunch of Michael Phelpses swimming in out there at Chandler Park.
Did you get a commission on swimsuits? Were you modeling swimsuits while you were doing the
Nobody wanted to see my milky white thighs. Fortunately, they got nice in hand.
So one last question before we move on. The question is, Joe Biden, should somebody be telling him it's time to go, or do you feel like he's got enough gas in the tank to do one more round?
I wish somebody would tell him it's time to, he did a nice job. He was a bridge president. He brought back governance, but I'd like to see somebody else. That's my preference.
Actually, and I wish somebody would tell him that too, because when he ran, I thought, okay, he's going to be a one-termer. It's going to be the bridge, like you said, the bridge between anarchy and a return to normal, and he'll step aside, but he decided not to. Now, I'm not going to say he hasn't been effective, but he has a problem of image and perception in the voters. And what the scariest scenario, and maybe Ed can talk about this for me, in 2024 is the low turnout election, because I can tell you right now that people my daughter's age, in her 20s, are completely unimpressed with both Trump and Biden, and may well just end up staying home. And a low turnout election is a bad election,
Yeah.
So I just, because the Trump people are motivated, and, that's what worries me, but that's.
Well, Biden has been told there is a money group out there raising money for another candidate. Okay.
Is this another Democrat, or is this the
no? This is
the no labels people.
No, not the no labels people. There's actually a group of Democratic funders, major donors.
Oh, okay.
As a matter of fact, basically the Republicans and the Democrats, the big money people, met for both sides to raise money for both sides to replace both of them. Believe it or not, you got George Soros and the Koch brothers again talking about how getting money to look for younger people. That's the case where sometimes money people that don't like each other come together. Mm-hmm. So that conversation has already been had, and it's been building.
Okay. You need a hint.
Fishman, did you want to say
no,
something?
It's okay. That's pretty much what I was going to say.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to the next thing. Interesting. Tudor Dixon had a little interview with Donald Trump, and she talks about abortion and the advice that Trump gave her.
Thank you. And I just want you to know that, and I'll tell my viewers that you came to me and you said, you got to talk differently about abortion. And we could not pivot. We could not pivot in time. And you were absolutely right, sir. And I hope that you are able to navigate that issue in 24, and that we can win those women back, because they are already putting out attack ads, and it is not a fair issue for them to attack on.
Yep. That's what happened to you. And that's what happened to a lot of other people. And it didn't happen to me because, there's a way of talking about it. They're the radicals. They're the radicals, and you have to explain it. And I think exceptions are very important. I think you need the exceptions. You and I talked about that.
What a crock of shit. I'm sorry, but that is.
He's responsible for the Dobbs Court. He's responsible for that Supreme Court decision. He's passed the court, that ain't going to change. And to now say, well, he's still more lenient, no restrictions, less restrictions, that is absolute bullshit. That's
absolutely true. And his claim that the Republicans lost women because there were no exceptions clauses in there, that's absolute crap. People lost women because sometimes they understand that sometimes a woman needs an abortion, and it doesn't have to do with rape and incest or anything like that. I mean, this was a right that we had that was taken away. and people don't like that.
Do we expect a different message this year from the candidates on abortion, or are they going to try to stick to the script of no exceptions, or like Haley Stevens tried during the debate, tried to have a very moderate approach, particularly for the Republican Party? Do we expect to see they know it's a loser for them if they continue on that path?
But that only happens, Alan, if they get it through the primary, because right now they have to stay where they're at to get through the primary.
Mm-hmm.
They have no choice.
Very true.
They have no choice. To get through the primary, they have to stay where they're at. If they get to the primary, that's why Nancy Haley's trying to assume if something happens to Trump, she's already building for the general election because now she knows where she has to be.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you see, Ed, as the person if Trump were to fall for some reason? Is it Haley? Is it Ron DeSantis? Seems to be going nowhere.
Well, everything right now, Haley Stevens, I would say, would be very strong, but the problem is she doesn't have a lot of support within the party. You're
talking about two different things. Ed's talking about the Senate, the Michigan Senate race, right?
Oh, okay.
No. I'm talking about
you said Haley Stevens. You mean Nikki Haley?
Nikki Haley.
Okay, there we go. All right.
Nikki Haley. Okay, sorry.
Senior moment.
Yes. Okay.
You can't run. Okay.
All right. No, I'm not running. Okay. As a matter of fact, that's what he said about Kennedy. He couldn't run because he had to walk first because he had a bad back. The point being is Nikki Haley she doesn't have enough support within the party. Okay. Right now, all the fundraising going out, all the movement behind it is for Youngkin. Okay, that's the choice right now that's been moving. There's been pushes to raise money for him. I'm getting emails every day. Will you support Youngkin? Will you help us with Youngkin? It's between DeSantis, Trump, and Youngkin. Will you help us with Youngkin? That's what's going on right now behind the scenes.
Huh. Do you think DeSantis would ever drop out?
No, his ego's too big.
Yeah. I mean, he really thinks that he's presidential material. And he's terrifying. He's worse than Trump. He's like Vivek Ramaswamy, with a little more mileage on him. And he's just as crazy. And I don't know. Ugh, shudder. What about for the Democrats?
The Democrats, I know Newsom's doing a big push behind the scenes. They're looking for, I think, the minority leader in the House. They're looking at him, looking at another black governor. There is a movement out there on that side too. The difficulty right now is, as long as Trump's there, they still think their best bet polling wise is Donald Trump.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Interesting. Now, speaking of Donald Trump, we've got in New York, Letitia James has a civil suit, $250 million suit against the Trump organization and Trump. She filed some papers saying that Trump had grossly exaggerated his income so that he could get loans at better rates. And she was saying that essentially, I think they were saying that his real worth was $812 million to $2.2 billion. He was saying that he had $5.7 billion in worth. Apparently, I was looking it up, and that the Trump Tower is worth about $371 million because they have $100 million in debt. Then all his New York properties in total are $720 million. And then all his golf courses in Mar-a-Lago is another $720 million. So it's really worth about, if you look at property wise, which is he's probably not cash flush. He's probably worth $1.4 billion, which he's not a poor man, obviously, but
it's so funny to think that didn't he estimate that Mar-a-Lago was worth $2 billion with a B? Mar-a-Lago, right? Yeah. We need to get Feiger back on the show and talk about
I think
Mar-a-Lago.
That was with the document. I think that was included with the document.
Right. Includes, property includes cash.
Property only worth $300 million. Documents bring it up to.
But you just forgot something. He's claiming now the fact when you add up all the sale of his T-shirts, that's where he comes the other $2 billion.
Yes. So I guess the question is it too much? Are we getting a sensory overload? If you watch the Republican, Newsmax, Fox, they're like, oh my God, they're doing everything to interfere with this election. They have little maps showing court dates and primaries, like Super Tuesday. One case is going to begin on, I guess, the DC case will begin on Super Tuesday. So they're saying, oh my God, look what they're doing to try to, derail this. Are people going to get numb to all the cases? Is it becoming too much? Oh, all right. Let me unmute the man. All right, Mr. Fishman.
I think that you have to separate the cases in your mind and in considering when they should go to trial. The DC case, I think the judge is doing exactly the right thing. And we're talking about a plot to overthrow the government. You're not going to sit there and delay it to 2026 and let all these people run around doing whatever they want to do. I think the documents case down in Florida, that's a pretty clear case, particularly as we discussed a couple of weeks ago, when you've got one of the participants who is now cooperating with the government about it. That's a simple case. The Georgia one, as you guys know, I've been hollering for years that let's bring this case and get it. The New York one, the one about his taxes and his lying about his worth, not too many people are as bad as Trump, but there's plenty of people in business who do the exact same thing. When they're trying to get loans, they're very wealthy and they can pay off the loan. When they're trying to pay taxes, of course, God, I didn't ever make that kind of dough. I just don't see the New York cases as being important. The most important cases to me are the three cases where they've got the evidence is overwhelming. It's just going to be a matter of getting the case to court. Mm-hmm. And that's why I like what Judge Chutkan did. And I don't know if you guys noticed, he's been threatening her. He must have been up all night last night, threatening her, threatening everybody. And she's unflappable, it looks like to me. And you got to remember what I say all the time. Once you get to the courtroom, all that talk is talk, all that bullshit that goes on his tweeting or whatever they call that stuff, that's all irrelevant. It's the courtroom that's going to decide it. And he's going to be screwed once he has to sit there and be a defendant in a criminal case.
Keep his mouth shut. That's going to be hard for him too, even in court.
It's interesting.
The best thing I can see against the hurt Trump is he's got to be live court view, TV view in the federal court and the state court, because that'll overcome. And number two, the New York case on wealth, isn't there a case, Steve, isn't there a case that she has to prove harm to somebody on those cases, and the fact that there's statute of limitations on those? There's some issues with statute of limitations, and she has to prove harm to the banks, which the banks said they may not be able to demonstrate that.
I don't know the answer to that because I don't do civil stuff and I don't know New York law.
Okay.
But with respect to the TV, the Georgia judge ruled yesterday, I think.
Yes.
I read something in the Post that said that that one will be on television. It's a state court case. The danger, last time we were talking about this, I was kind of in favor of having a federal case, even though we've never do that. Nobody in federal court ever has their case live on television. They'd have to be awfully careful because of the threats. I mean, look what happened to those two election workers in Georgia. That's part and parcel of that case. You absolutely have to make sure you don't show the jurors. Yep. And you really, really, really got to make sure that the jurors' identities are kept secret, because these people out here, I mean, we've seen it over and over again. People getting sentenced. Some guy was sentenced out west somewhere for some crazy threats that were being made. So it's a mixed bag. I think for the public to see the trial live would be a good thing in the federal case. But I think you really got to think about what are you going to do to ensure the safety of the witnesses and particularly the jurors. Because if they find out who these people are, I don't put anything past these crazy MAGA people.
And even court personnel. I mean, these people, the MAGA right is nuts. And if Trump paints this, which he's doing as a conspiracy to get him, they'll respond the way they have before, which is violently.
I was going to say on the New York case and the finance and stuff like that, we saw in the early 80s when the FBI was wiretapping Coleman Young during the Vista investigation, and Coleman Young is talking to Darylyn Bowers, his woman friend, and says, he says, how Coleman was interested in getting a loan to get a Wendy's in Ohio or something in Cleveland. And so he said, how we made it look like we didn't have a lot of money to buy the barbecue place at Livernois for the SBA loan. He says, well, we got to do the opposite for this. So as Steve says, it's obviously it's pretty common practice. We saw, speaking of Rudy Giuliani, the judge gave an award against him for in the case of those two women, which was just really so criminal. These women were doing their civic duty, trying to help out, and he just destroyed their lives. And he's whining about it. And here's after he gets arraigned in the Fulton County jail. Here's a little bit of a press conference.
If they can do this to me, they can do this to you. Remember, 3 years ago, the FBI raided my apartment and my law office. And they investigated me for 2.5 years. 20 years of my life they investigated. And they wrote a letter to the grand jury that they couldn't find a single crime. So that should have pretty much cleared me out, don't you think? Except for this ridiculous case in which I'm being prosecuted for defending an American citizen.
What another crock of shit. I mean, that guy's going to be found drowned in his own bathtub within 18 months.
Well, let me ask the lawyers. We've got the lawyers here. How dangerous is it to indict lawyers? Is there any danger to that, or what do you see? I
think there's a danger to saying, if it's general and broad, but this is pretty specific to specific acts, and lawyers who engage in criminal conduct are entitled to no protection.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's. I think Rudy's claim that there's criminalizing the practice of law is absurd. What he was doing wasn't the practice of law.
No,
right.
It's like walking into a bank. That whole argument is like saying, I walk into a bank and I stick a finger in my pocket and I say, "Give me all the money." And there's a cop in the next line who overhears me and tackles me before the money gets turned over. It's like, I was only exercising my right to free speech.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same.
Yeah. So we have here Robert Davis, who is he's
the gadfly.
Yeah, I mean he's an enigma, really, because here is a guy. For those of you who don't remember him, here's a guy who was indicted, convicted of, I believe, embezzling $200,000 from the Highland Park schools, did time, and now he's a voice of our conscience. He's going after, and now he's trying to disqualify Trump in Michigan. He's appealed to Jocelyn Benson, saying that Trump, for trying to, insurrection and rebellion disqualifies himself. I think there was a law that came out after the Civil War that they did that. And so is there any chance of I know there's been talk that he shouldn't be qualified to run, period, but is there any chance in Michigan that could happen?
Well, I've read a couple of columns by some real fancy constitutional lawyers that have made that argument, but I want to defer to Ed. I have a question for you. I think if you did something like that, that would be really counterproductive. I mean, if you can't beat him at the ballot box, if we can't beat this guy at the ballot box, given all of the stuff that he's pulled and all of the things he's facing, I don't like the idea of trying to do it on some. I mean, you can imagine what the normal, doesn't even have to necessarily be a MAGA person, but anybody that's leaning in that direction, they're going to start saying, well, wait a minute. You can't even run for office. Come on. I mean, it's a constitutional argument. It's a lawyer's argument. And you got to remember that normal people are not sitting around listening to lawyers debate about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. And I don't like that idea. I really don't.
Yeah.
Well, politically, I would say this to happen, the United States Supreme Court would have to rule. Any state going independent of themselves would be stupid. They're going to talk tough. You've got Dan and Nessel talking tough, Jocelyn Benson talking tough. But politically, I agree with you, Steve. It would be a stupid thing to do that because you're going to cause problems. The best thing to do is get the Supreme Court. If they rule, that's fine. But otherwise, even Republicans and Democrats, everybody I talk to says it's dumb unless you get the U.S. Supreme Court to do it.
Right.
To me, it's just amazing, really. I mean, it's so different worlds. If you watch, I was watching Newsmax last night, which is to the right of Fox, and this anchor woman was just going on and on that, oh my God, they're talking about, and maybe we should talk a little bit about. I'm curious about the emails, those secret emails that are coming up with Biden. Is there anything there? And the question is, this woman is like, don't worry, once Trump is back, everything will be good. I mean, it's so scary, the division in this country. What let's talk about the emails. I don't know if anyone's followed that at all. They found secret emails that Joe Biden had, or under different names or whatever. Is there anything to that, or is that what's the sense? I mean, if you watch Newsmax and Fox News, there is plenty to that.
Well,
the emails basically they're trying to do innuendo on emails because there's more references to business in the conversation, but there's still no factual basis. Okay, I think a better area on email, the fact is here in Michigan, where Republicans are suing the state of Michigan because some of the emails that were sent for Benton Harbor were in Greek.
No, they were in English using Greek letters.
I know, but it's pretty.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I saw that. Actually, I give Charlie LaDuff a fair amount of shit on this show because I find him incredibly untrustworthy as a journalist. But that was one case where he had something good, but he felt that he had to package it in all this ridiculous outrage. If he had led with that, when I used to teach writing, my number one piece of advice that I gave people was, when the facts speak for themselves, let them. But he had to he had to load it up with all of this Fox Newsy kind of crap about, Gretchen Whitmer's gonna wilt like a, like whatever. And, as soon as the hot spotlight is turned on her, and it's like, lead with that stuff. That was good stuff. And it, he buried it, but oh well. Not everybody can be as skilled a columnist as
So I guess the question is Ed, is there any can the Republicans get a lot of mileage off these I mean, there is a lot of innuendo, and they're like, oh my God, Hunter Biden was copied on some of these emails, and we don't know what those emails really say, if anything. And there's just thousands of them, and they're trying, I don't know. It's interesting. They're pounding the drum. I mean, it's so funny. You watch MSNBC, CNN, it's like, one expert after another. What's going to happen in the Atlanta Fulton County trial? What's going to happen here? You go to Fox and Newsmax, and it's all about, oh my God, Hunter Biden. This is the biggest scandal ever. Joe Biden is so incompetent. They show Joe Biden shuffling a lot of video.
If they had the goods would be on the table. They don't have the goods.
Nancy, you'll be happy about this. You're talking about youth, Nancy.
Yeah.
And the fact that you out there in the swimming pools with your bathing suit on, is that they saw Republican youth voters now moving away from Fox.
So
still the older people like Alan and Joel and Steve that are staying with Fox, but the younger youthful like you, they're moving away.
It's another world. It's so funny. I mean, if you really want to see the division, because from one side you look and go, oh my God, this guy, Trump's a cult figure. How are these people? Why do they love him? And then you switch over to Fox and you get an understanding of what and why half the country hates Joe Biden.
Right, but isn't part of the Republican playbook to create hysteria? I don't know what happened with the caravan a couple of years ago. I don't know where they ended up going and what happened with that.
Yeah, that's what they do. It's like,
and it doesn't have to be real, doesn't have to be true, but it's going to scare people. It's going to make people think that there's awful, corrupt things going on in government. It's the playbook. It's just
it's like the memo of the day.
Getting people infuriated.
Yeah.
Even though there's nothing to be infuriated about, this is the playbook.
As a matter of fact, if you go back till Nixon's time, that what kept Republicans outperforming Democrats is the issue of right to life, because Republicans come out on single issues. Okay. Now, since the right to life issue is going away in another direction, they have to find something else to generate the base to turn out the vote.
Culture issues.
Yes.
Not just any old issue. It's got to be an easy to understand by a dumb person culture issue. And, it's one thing to talk about tax policy. It's quite another to talk about, transgender, kids who are transitioning in school and nobody will tell mom and dad about it, and that's easy for dumb people to understand, even though it is a pretty nuanced question overall. So
it is. As a matter of fact, AGT, Americans Got Talent, the top winner may be a girl who's supported by and adopted by two male gay men.
Okay.
Well, and she's been adopted. She's doing very successful, and she's getting into music. That is going to blow the world apart. How can two men raise this woman who's a successful singer?
Are you kidding? If they're Broadway show tunes fans, very easily.
I know.
Okay, sweetie, we're going to start with some Judy Garland. I'm sorry, I don't want to deal in cruel stereotypes, but yeah.
Well, that's Petrie who sang the Over the Rainbow for that part of AGT.
Right. Yeah.
So I have here's a little humor break here. We've got a little tape from the Daily Show, which we know hasn't been on because of the writers' strike, which is amazing how long that strike has been going on. Mm-hmm. I have a good friend, Paula Yu, who is out there in California, who's written for like different TV shows and stuff. He is on the picket line, sometimes with their violin. But anyways, I just found this.
We looked up some words that have been said about you.
Okay.
Crazy, Q clown, Looney Tune, unhinged, moron.
I've got a few more. Osama bin Karen, a dipstick, a dingbat, a dolt, a dullard, a dimwit, a doofus, a dummy, dumbass. I'm only a third of the way through the D's.
Looks like the average troll in my Twitter feed.
A good argument for misogyny. Nazi wine mom, Nazi cave woman, just Nazi.
Oh, I don't let name calling bother me or offend me. I just don't.
Butterbrain. This one's from someone across the pond, a daft wanker. That's British for stupid.
That is great.
I like Osama bin Karen. I'm going to
use right. And daft wanker. I thought that was So, well, Steve has got to get going. So maybe we'll do we'll start. Oh, hold on. Let me play a quick commercial and then we'll.
I'm Wayne County Treasurer Eric Sabri. We are living through unprecedented times. As a result, the Michigan Homeowner Assistance Fund was created. This fund, administered by the state of Michigan, is designed to help homeowners cope with pandemic-related hardships, such as delinquent property taxes. Residents may apply for up to $25,000 to help cover 2019, 2020, and 2021 tax years. Previous year's taxes must be paid in full or in a payment agreement with the Treasurer's office. Eligible homeowners must have a qualified financial hardship that occurred on or after January 21st, 2020. You must currently own and occupy your home as your primary residence and must have owned it since January 21st, 2020. To see if you qualify, please visit waynemetro.org, call 313-388-9799, or email taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
All righty. I see Steve Fishman's got his Mumford t-shirt on, but we're going to Here we go.
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
All right. Well, let's
Steve goes first.
Let's get to
first.
All right, Fish.
Mine's simple. Rudy Giuliani. I've never used him as the Schmuck of the Week, but his performance this week made it an easy choice. Just and here's the thing that's the worst about it, and I think I've mentioned this before. At some point in time, Giuliani's going to recognize I'm 79 years old. I really don't want to die in prison. He's going to want to cooperate with Jack Smith or with Fani Willis or both. And they're going to hold up to him some of the idiotic things he has said about their cases, which would obviously be grist for cross-examination, right? So not only is he a moron, and not only is he lost his complete marbles, but he's making it more difficult for him to save his butt when the time comes. And so therefore he's my candidate. And I have to get out of here because my machine is running out and I'm headed to see the Styx concert of all things in Battle Creek.
Cool.
That's not bad.
All right. All right. Have fun. Okay.
Oh, that's hilarious.
All righty.
I can't believe I never pegged Steve for a Styx fan, but
a Styx
you
fan. Well,
you never know.
Maybe
you're alone in the car with the radio on. You can do whatever you want. So,
okay. All right, Nancy, you have your.
Yeah, I had to scramble because I've been out of practice since I've been up in the high chair, and have forgotten that this is one of the chores of being on the thing is coming up with your schmuck. But I have one, and it is another one that's pretty easy this week, and it's Vivek Ramaswamy. Who is yet another right-wing moron bringing shame to my native state of Ohio. And he said a whole stinking bouquet of terrible things in the last couple of weeks, but he really took the cake on the Sunday shows this week when somebody asked him, like, what would he have done if he had been in Mike Pence's shoes on January 6th when the certification of the vote came in. And he reeled off this ridiculous answer that was something like, and then I would have done this, and then I would have done this, and then I would have done this. It was like, it was like listening to a little kid. It was like listening to Calvin and Hobbes' Calvin ball, and no, the rules are different now. And now the ball is radioactive. I mean, I would have changed this and I would have done this. And it's like, and this guy thinks he can be president of the United States, and he's getting attention because he understands that in this stupid media age, all you have to do is get your face and your shiny white teeth on the news. And that's what he does. And I've never been so glad that I don't have cable TV anymore.
To me, he's a classic wealthy blowhard.
Idiot. Yes.
Who thinks he knows it all based through a lens of, I make a lot of money and I have the answers to everything, and he knows so little. It's scary.
That's exactly right.
Trump on top of all that. So
yeah, he really is. And he's an argument for the. One of the things he said this in the last couple of weeks is you should be 25 before you can vote, and he's an argument for raising, because you have to be 35 to be president. He's 38. I think maybe we ought to. It's like we need reverse ageism. Let's raise it to 40. Maybe he'll learn something in 2 years. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah. All right, Joel.
I'm going to go with Saudi Arabia and MSB for sentencing a retired teacher to death. Or using his Twitter feed. He has maybe 7 followers, but he was critical of the government, and he has been sentenced. He's 50 years old. He's been sentenced to death, and that is terrifying. Doing business with Saudi Arabia is so.
They own professional golf now.
They do, and they're getting mainstream, but it is that government is a terrifying government. It's a repressive government. It's a corrupt government. They kill journalists. There's been no consequence from what I can see.
Right. Yeah. Both Trump and Biden have not done anything about the Khashoggi thing, and they just want to say, "Hey, we need oil." So
the geopolitical interests are more important than the human rights.
I think Trump was envious that they killed a Washington Post journalist.
Oh, absolutely. Trump would.
I want to kill a Washington Post journalist.
Right, I wanted to do that.
That's the week is MSB, Saudi Arabia, and this poor man and his family.
Saudi Arabia is such a duplicitous country. I mean, they're just so two-faced.
It's MBS, isn't it?
MSB, MBS. I have no idea.
Okay, because I remember they were calling him. It's Mohammed bin Salman. Okay, because they were calling him Mohammed Bonesaw. So that was
that's fair.
Yeah, fair enough. So.
All right, Ed.
Well, I'll start off that we should have a toast to Ted Cruz, who says, "Kiss my ass if he's limited to 2 beers." And the other thing, the fact is, because it's Texas again, I cannot believe in Texas, the Schmucks are the counties in Texas, that you get a ticket and you're stopped at the state border if you're going over for women's health.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Unbelievable.
Yes. Unbelievable. It's so backwards, man. It's
I know.
Well, mine is Newsmax. They posted last night. They had a picture of Rudy Giuliani with some information how to help his legal fund, and I thought that was so disgraceful. But I have a little variation of that.
He's trying to find himself, damn it.
I know it's in there somewhere.
Yes. So anyways, I guess we may end a few minutes early for once. But
can I just say one thing about Newsmax? Yeah. I have noticed because like I said, I don't have cable news anymore. So most of the clips that I see are in social media, usually on Twitter, which is, it's always, somebody's always putting something up there. And I've noticed that fewer and fewer of them are from Fox. I think that younger people think of Fox as grandpa's network. And, we always talk about the stereotype of the Fox News grandpa. And more of them are coming from, Right Side Broadcasting Network, One America News and Newsmax, which make Fox look like CNN. I mean, they're even crazier. And I think of all the younger people out there who are getting their news from these outlets, and it's terrifying. While legit news outlets wither on the vine, which just blows my mind. And
now add Barstool. Now the young are going to Barstool, TikTok, and Instagram for news too. But Barstool is growing a youth movement for news.
Is it a whole platform? I know Barstool Sports is a entity.
But they're also moving into some other stuff. That's what they're getting.
They're getting into like news now, regular news. Ugh.
Well, you know, it's interesting because Fox, I mean, the base were the Trump fans and particularly the MAGAs. And now Trump is trashing Fox all the time. He's mad. I think that they interviewed William Barr and Chris Christie, who have both been trashing Trump. And Trump, you know, goes back at them. What did Trump refer to William Barr as? Sort of basically a lazy, no good for nothing, something.
Right.
So the message is, you know, the Foxy people are looking for, you know, new venues and stuff. So, you know, Newsmax and, you know, and maybe Barstool. I know Nancy has an opinion about the head dude at Barstool. What's his name?
What's his name? I'll think of it in a minute.
He's the Jewish dude who does the pizza eating all the time, but I can't remember.
Yeah, I know. I'll do it real. I'll do a real quick Google.
Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you know, if you look at the insanity of it all, I mean, when we were growing up in journalism, you know, it was so limited. I mean, the voices were so limited. I mean, even, you know, a reporter went and interviewed 30 people and decided, I'm going to pick these 5 for my story. Their voice will be heard. Then the letters to the editor, there was a gatekeeper there, you know, no, this person's crazy. No, this person isn't significant enough or whatever. And so the voices were really limited. Now it's the Wild West. There's a million outlets. Everybody's got podcasts. I mean, there's so many podcasts up the wazoo, including this. And it's just insane. I mean, there's just so many venues for people to speak and have a
terrifying, truthfully, is that when we, you know, again, in my youth and not so youth, you know, journalism, I respected it. It was based on facts. And at the time I could trust those who were giving me those facts. And now it's fact free.
Yeah.
It depends who you trust to determine what facts are real. And that's a problem because then we can't have a dialogue because we're talking different languages and different facts. And that's the essence of what we're going through now. We're speaking.
Yeah, I think Fox. I say the genesis of this is I think CNN was really trying to be straight down the middle, and CNN was always very just straight, just the facts, kind of the associated press of cable. And then Fox came in with a point of view, and they were like, "Hey, you idiots at CNN, look at our ratings. You guys suck." And so the MSNBC, CNN said, "Oh, we've got to have a little bit of a point of view. People are looking for echo chambers," and we created this craziness.
Monster.
But you're forgetting, Alan, that before all that started, we had USA Today starting off when they thought to be the central location of news.
Right.
That was the USA Today was the go-to newspaper in the 90s.
Well, yeah, certainly at hotels, every hotel you went to, they were free.
The investigative paragraph, right?
Yeah.
They were really free.
USA Today sort of evolved, and they started hiring people from the New York Times, the Washington Post, LA Times.
No, for the big beats, they did pretty well, I think.
Yeah, and they started sort of growing on their own. But yeah, I mean, the cable landscape now is it's insanity what you see out there. It's just so much hate and bile, you know, just whatever.
Well, in the 60s, the only thing that I had cable-wise, if you lived in Kalamazoo, they did have cable in the 60s, was Morgus Presents on Channel 4.
Right. So we've got this weekend. Nancy's involved in the Jazz Fest this weekend over on the riverfront.
I encourage everyone to come to the Jazz Festival this weekend. You may see me, you may not, depending on how hot it is. I may be hiding in the air-conditioned trailer, but I'm on the social media team for the Jazz Festival, and I encourage everybody to come down. It's free. It's the largest free jazz festival in the world.
Cool.
So, yeah.
And then you have Arts, Beats, and Eats, which I am not a huge fan of, and I'm really kind of pissed that It should have stayed in Pontiac, where it could have actually helped commerce. Instead, they shut down commerce in Royal Oak. It's not good for the business people. Maybe the city must get some, as we say, a little hop from that. But it's and then we have in Hamtramck, we have
that's a good festival too, the Hamtramck Labor Day Festival.
Weekend, and they'll have a parade and all that kind of stuff. So
you may see a young woman who bears a striking resemblance to my husband playing in a band at that. So my daughter's playing at the Hamtramck. I won't be able to see it. I'll be at Hart Plaza.
There's also the Franklin Roundup, if anybody's interested in the village of Franklin.
Oh, the village of Franklin Roundup.
Right, there is the Roundup, which is tradition.
Yeah.
You grew up in Franklin, right, Joel?
I did grow up in Franklin, yeah. And I went to the Labor Day Roundup religiously, even though
what's the Roundup? What's Roundup about?
It's a little gathering in the village green, which is in front of the church. They have a little, art show and art exhibits, and then it's just fun country games. Like throwing things on stuff, like a ring around something. It's just, it's just sweet. It's the time.
Okay.
Yes, I think it is. Or the time forgot, something like that.
And pretty soon it'll be the Standish Cheeseburger Festival.
I thought that was the Caseville Cheeseburger Festival.
That's right.
Already over.
Yes.
Yeah, that's in August, and August is behind us now.
Behind us, anyway. Yes.
All right, guys, got to go. Dave Portnoy.
Nancy Derringer, welcome back.
I knew it was Portnoy.
Yeah,
for lifeguardist. Ed Sarpolus, the pollster, it'll be busy. He's going to have a busy season coming up. And I have to say, Ed did an amazing job in 2022. You were right on. The 11 people got angry when you predicted a huge margin, but you were absolutely right. And Joel Sklar, a great attorney, and a mensch. Anyway, so everybody have a great Labor Day weekend and drive home safely.
All right, guys.